Greetings, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today, we've got a big crew here to rank the albums, the studio albums of legendary thrash metal titans. Exodus, one of my favorite thrash metal bands of all time, not included in the big four, but quite frankly, they sit just outside that big four. So we've got lots of great folks here today. We got returning from the last couple of weeks, Brian Slagel from metalbladerecords. We've got Steve Keeler from rockfantasy. And for the first time ever on Sea of Tranquility, Elliott Fullam from littlepunkpeople. Elliott, welcome to the show. How you doing, my friend?
I am doing awesome. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us. So how we work this is we're going to start at our least favorite of the 10 Exodus albums. Everybody's going to get a chance to go number 10, then number 9, so on and so forth. And everybody feel free to say little things about why you like the album or why you don't like the album and why it kind of sat on the list that it sits on, right? So I'm going to let Elliott go first today, and we'll go kind of, we've got the new Zoom window look here. So we'll go Elliott, Steve, Brian, me, and we'll continue going round and round in circles. So Elliott, your number 10 Exodus album, if you please.
My number 10 Exodus album is Force of Habit. The reason why I say this is because the guitar tones kind of feel like something is missing. I don't like the production as much, but there is a few highlights on there for me of Force of Habit and Architect of Pain.
All right, I'm next, huh? Hey, we're going to tie, Elliott. I got number 10 as Force of Habit, too, and I just didn't think it was one of their stronger albums. You know, I think I liked it quite a bit when it came out. I sold a lot of it in the store back in those days, and to me, it's just not. It's number 10. It's not anything higher than that for me. I didn't put too much thought into that one, but that was my number 10. So, Brian, all yours.
A little bit of Exodus trivia. Peter mentioned that they were almost part of the Big Four. Well, they almost were part of the Big Four because if you remember the Yankee Stadium show, Megadeth almost couldn't play it because Dave Mustaine had some physical issues. And Exodus actually flown into New York to play the show, but Dave was okay enough to play. So they almost were part of the Big Four. So
wow, that's a good point.
10, I have Exhibit B, The Human Condition.
Okay.
My number 10, I'm going to echo Elliott and Steve here, Force of Habit from 1992. Cool. For me, this is a pretty weak album, I think. Yeah, there's a couple good songs on here. Architect of Pain is not too bad, but I just think overall, this was early 90s, right? I think every metal band was struggling to kind of keep an identity in that decade with, grunge and alternative music kind of really starting to rise. And I think so many bands really struggled with, what exactly were they going to do amidst all that. So that's my number 10. Elliott, number 9.
For my number 9, I have Shovel-Headed Kill Machine. This is the first album with Rob Dukes that is on my list. Paul Bostoff was on the drums. That's a cool little fun fact. And my favorite highlights for this album is Shudder to Think. And the thing is that this album, sometimes I'm in the mood for it, so it might fluctuate sometimes. So maybe after this maybe after this top 10 list, it might be higher. So I like the album a lot.
Cool. My number 9 is, I forgot to write the dates down. I was going to do all this in the last hour, and I was on the phone with a million things going on at my store, which is open for curbside pickup, and I got a crew up there actually going in. We're going to try to do a little auction and clean out the basement in a couple of weeks just to raise some funds. But my number 9 is Impact is Intimate, which I liked a lot at the time too, and Lunatic Parade was probably my highlight of the songs off of there. I kind of picked one song to talk about in each one. Impact is Imminent, and Lunatic Parade was my number 9. Even though it has a giant pinball coming down the highway, which should be higher on my list because I'm such a pinball guy. Hey, there it is. That's that giant pinball. Brian?
At number 9, I've got Thorn in My Side. Really great record, actually. And the song Thorn in My Side would probably make my Exodus top 10 songs. Had we been doing that this week.
Okay.
Had we be doing that. All right. I'm going to go also 1990s Impact is Imminent. For me, this was kind of really a letdown after Fabulous Disaster, which I really dig a lot. And again, I dug it when it came out. I listened to this quite a bit when it came out. But listening back to it now, it's okay. It's definitely, for me, not prime Exodus by any means. So, Elliott, back to you for number 8.
All right, for my number 8 is the Atrocity Exhibition Exhibit A. Originally, I had Exhibit B here, but after listening to Exhibit B, I kind of did a switcheroo. This is also Rob Dukes and Andy Sneap produced this album, who's my favorite producer. He produced Firepower for the Judas Priest, the new Judas Priest album, and the Grinding Wheel from Overkill. Those are some of my favorite albums.
Oh, those are great albums. Yes.
Yeah. And then Children of a Wordless God, Iconoclasm, and the Garden of Bleeding are my highlights.
Children of a Worthless God is incredible.
Yes.
We are at number 8 now, you said, right?
Yep.
I'm going with one that I thought would have been way higher on my list, but after kind of listening to Exodus all week, I'm going with Pleasures of the Flesh, 1987. And Parasite's my number 1 song off of that album. And I mean, I listened to that album a ton when it came out. To me, it just didn't hold up the test of time compared. But, you know, with any of these lists, they're top 10s to me, but most of it can be switched around at any time. Like I've said in many other times, like if you're in a mood for certain things and, you got a song in your head, oh yeah, that's off that album, whatever. But yeah, Pleasures in the Flesh, which was a strong release, and I sold tons of that. With my store open in 85, and you know, that's my number 8.
In fact, I bought my LP at your store.
Yay.
I seem to be the outlier this week. My top 10 seems to be very different, at least so far, than yours. At number 8, I have Blood In, Blood Out.
Oh, yeah. Listen to that on my morning walk today, actually.
Pretty low in the ranking there, Brian. Whew.
Yeah, I told you, I'm the outlier this week.
That's all right.
Good.
I think we all agree, though, most of these albums are pretty damn solid. Some are pretty spectacular. I mean, you know, other than like my bottom 2, which, yeah, I think the rest of them are pretty damn good. So Elliott, you may say that this is pretty low on my list, but Shovel-Headed Kill Machine.
Yeah.
2005. I like this album. You know, I'm not 100% sold on Rob as the vocalist for this band. And I think a lot of people kind of, after he was in the band for a couple of years, probably kind of agreed. But I think that the production on those few albums are really stellar and, you know, pretty ferocious sounding, whether you like his vocals or not. I don't think he was a perfect fit, but I think the material on here is pretty damn strong. So that's my number 8. So number 7, over to you.
All right. For my number 7, I have Impact is Imminent. 1990, this came out with Zetro on vocals. My favorite song is AWOL and Only Death Decides. Objection Overruled, I love because at the very beginning, it kind of has that Overkill, the song Overkill, not the band Overkill, from Motorhead. The drums in the beginning, it reminds me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, the production is kind of dry, but it's still really good, like Injustice for All. But I kind of like that sound.
Cool. We're up to number 7, correct?
Yep.
Next, number 7 for me is Exhibit B, The Human Condition. And one of my highlights from that album was the Ballad of Leonard and Charles. It was such a different, like, you know, as Exodus, if we listened to, were mostly like shorter songs with the Dukes material and some of this stuff. It was like the odd of 7-8 minute songs on some of these albums, you know. But I thought the Rob Dukes material was very heavy. And even the live performances were quite good with him too. I got to see Exodus quite a bit with Rob singing back in that era. So that was my number 7.
At number 7, I've got the aforementioned, I think by all of you so far, Shovel-Headed Kill Machine, which I like the record. I absolutely hate the title of the record. It's my worst title, Exodus record title of all of them by far.
Shovel.
It is pretty awful. I would agree.
Kill Machine. Like a Daisy will even show her teeth for that one.
I was gonna put that last, and then I listened to it. I go, oh wait, it's not that bad. I'll put it up a little higher.
Oh, there's definitely some good songs on that.
Yeah, it's definitely good. I'm gonna go with my number 7, Atrocity Exhibition Exhibit A, which I dig. And like I mentioned, you know, Elliott mentioned, but Children of a Worthless God is an incredible song. Garden of Bleeding is good. Iconoclasm. I just love the production of this. And again, it's really heavy, like Steve said. And I think they were, if you listen to like the early part of their career and the later part of their career, they're definitely going for more epic style songwriting, because you listen, you got like 5, 6, 7, 8 minute long songs with just crushing riffage. Whereas early in the career are these quick little 3.5 minute long thrash songs. Right, definitely a different feel, different sound, but solid record. I dig it. Elliott, back to you.
All right, for my number 6, I have Exhibit B, The Human Condition, came out 2010 with also Rob Dukes on vocals. Like I said, I kind of switched it with Exhibit A. I originally had Exhibit A here, but now I have Exhibit B. My favorite songs are Beyond the Pale, Downfall, and Democide. And for my opinion, I think the guitar tones are the best on this album, and the overall production is the best on this album. That's just my opinion. And this album turned 10 years old 2 days ago, which I thought was cool.
Yes, it did.
And
Yes, it did.
10 years.
Time's flying. My
Six,
number
right?
6 is something one of you just talked about, was the shovel-headed kill machine. Raised, Deafenphetamine were two of the stronger tracks off that album, and great album. It's my number 6. And yeah, it is a wild name there, Brian. The shovel-headed kill machine.
It'd be the name of a Cannibal Corpse song, not an album.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what we need. We need some Cannibal Corpse one week.
Right. All right, so number 6, I've got Tempo of the Damned, which also produced by Andy Sneap, who, as we mentioned, amazing producer, very good friend of mine. Everything he does sounds amazing. He's done Amon Amarth, Killswitch Engage, a bunch of other stuff from us, and he produced that. I think he was in my opinion, one of the bigger reasons why Exodus has stayed relevant for so long, because the production that he does is just so amazing. And quick trivia note, lead singer, Mr. Zetro, is a huge Calgary Flames hockey fan. Every time I talk to him, we talk Calgary Flames hockey. So.
Man, I had tickets to go see the Devils and the Flames right before this crap went down. And I started just going back to hockey games. My dad and I used to go years ago, make it quick and short. And I ended up going to Devils early this year, and I had such a good time going back to a hockey game. And I was getting so into hockey again this year. I fell out of it for a few years, and now there's no hockey.
Soon, Steve. Soon, hopefully.
Yep.
All right, my number 6. I'm forgetting who I'm echoing here, but Exhibit B, The Human Condition. I think Elliott picked this as well. Again, a strong record. And I got to echo what Brian says. It's like the second half of their career, probably thanks to Andy Sneap. Man, it sounds like a different band. I mean, it's just so powerful and potent, and he's got that signature sound, right? I mean, everything he touches is just bigger than life. And I think this is definitely my favorite record from the Rob Duke era. Elliott, back to you.
For my number 5, I have Tempo of the Damned. This album came out in 2004, which is my birth year. This is Zetro. This is with Zetro on vocals. Very consistent album. I feel like this is a very good place to put this album, number 5, because every song sounds really, really, really good. Forward March. I love the dual guitars on that song. Kind of reminds me of the New Testament album. They have that one song, Children of the Next Level. But that sounds similar, but I love that. And it's also produced by Andy Sneap.
Yes. We're number 5 for me. I'm going to be a copycat with you, Justin. Tempo of the Damned for me, too, for number 5. I'm copying, and I don't think I can say any more than he just said about it. So.
All right, Brian, what do you got?
Stuff.
I can't. Right now, I'm currently obsessed with the Terrifier mask going on over there. That
it's kind of obsessing your thoughts.
Quick plug: if you have not seen the original Terrifier, it's one of the greatest splatter horror movies of all time, with potentially one of the greatest kill scenes ever. If you ask Carrie King's wife, Aisha, it is the greatest kill scene. So anyway, quick shout out to that. At number 5, I have somebody else said this as well. Impact is imminent.
Okay.
Also, I'm also going to be in Terrifier 2 as well, so look out for me.
Wow, very nice.
Got ourselves a regular movie star in the Sea of Tranquility, Pete.
That's right. Very cool.
Not just those rock and roll.
All you horror
viewers.
fans, check it out.
Oh, yeah.
All right, my number 5, 1987's Pleasures of the Flesh. I believe Steve was the one who said it earlier. I was hugely into this when it came out. Saw them live. This is the tour they did with Celtic Frost and is it Anthrax? I'm trying to remember who. I don't know. I saw them at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center. I don't remember exactly who was on the bill, but bought the LP in Steve's store way back then.
Cool.
Listening back on it now, though, it's like not as strong as I remember, but still pretty good. I mean, you know, some Parasite's a great song on here. Deranged, I always really love. The title track is really good. Seeds of Hate. I mean, it's got some really strong tracks. I just from the Zetro era, probably not the strongest album, but still a fun album. Number 5 for me.
I like
Elliott,
the
back to you.
original artwork better.
Yeah, but that's yeah. Well,
this one they're at a tiki bar.
yep.
All right.
Elliott, it's all you.
For my number 4, I have Blood and Blood Out. This album has a special place in my heart because I interviewed Zetro when this album came out, and I saw them live, and Zetro threw me the Exodus wristband.
Nice.
His own.
Cool.
Hell yeah. And my favorite songs are Numb, Blood In, Blood Out, and Salt the Wounds. For Numb, I said that was my favorite song to Zetro during the interview, and he said, oh, that's my favorite too. So I thought that was cool. And then for Salt the Wounds, Kirk Hammett has a cool guest guitar solo on that song, which I love.
Cool. We're up to my number, what, 3 here?
4.
Almost got it. I've done this before. I mess up sometimes. Number 4, The Atrocity Exhibit from 2007. Some of the Exhibit A. Riot Act, Children of a Worthless God are 2 of my highlights from that album. And another strong record that was done in the 2000s. And Exodus was doing their comeback sort of there. And I saw them a bunch of times in New York City on a bunch of tours. And strong record for me, obviously.
They play the Gramercy or BB King's on that tour, Steve? I don't remember.
I do remember them playing. I seen them at PlayStation Theater with Belphegor warming up and Exodus, and I forget the whole lineup for that night, but it was a kill. I think Creator was the headline.
Yeah, I'm trying because I know I saw them a lot around that time too.
Getting there at last second, and I know those guys very well, and they were like setting up a card table, like really quick to sell merch, and they just had made the show. It was the beginning of the tour.
All right, Brian, what do you got?
All right, so for my number 4, I kind of went off the grid a little bit. I didn't get any specific rules about what we can and cannot include. So at my number 4, I have Another Lesson in Violence Live, which I love the way it sounds. It's also the first time they ever worked with Andy Sneap, so hence the sound being really good. It's also a throwback to a lot of the early stuff, which, as you'll see in my top 3, is all my favorite stuff. So number 4, Another Lesson in Violence Live.
It's something that they actually did an in-store at Rock Fantasy on that album. They were playing the Chance, and they came to the store, and we did a nice in-store party with them, and that was from that they were promoting that album on that tour.
Cool, Prick Brian, and I'm not going to scold you for going against the grain, and I'll tell you why, because we had a handful of viewers when we announced we were doing this show that said, please, I know you guys don't normally talk about live albums when you do Ranking the Studio albums, but please mention that live album. So, Brian, you're the man. They're going to love you for it.
I helped that. I feel good.
See that? I didn't even have to tell you anything, right? It just happened. That's the way it should work. Yeah. All right, my number 4. Elliott and I are on the same page, I think, here. Blood In, Blood Out, 2014. I think this is a terrific record. And again, the production is just out of control. Great. A lot of great songs on here. Again, lengthy songs, just crunchy riffage, Wrapped in the Arms of Rage, Salt the Wound, Blood In, Blood Out, all sorts of great stuff on here. I really dig this record a lot. My favorite of all the newer stuff. All right, next up around the clock, Elliott, your turn.
All right, for number 3, I have Bonded by Blood in 1985. Bonded by Blood, Deliver Us to Evil, and Metal Command are my 3 top highlights for that album. I like Metal Command because it has that Motorhead-inspired riffage to it that I love. And the only reason why I put this here is because I don't like the production as much as I do the albums ahead of it. But I think the classic, awesome, thrashing Exodus album.
Yep. All right, so Steve just held up the LP with the original cover artwork, and I held up this lame-o CD. So why did they do that? I have no idea. I mean, granted, I get that the original album cover may be a bit shocking to some people, but this is as lame as you're going to get, right? I mean, come on.
It was probably something to do with the PMRC or whatever else. Right?
No, it was right. Who had the rights to the album cover?
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if it was something to sell it better at Walmart's or something like that, you know?
I mean, this is a Combat CD I'm looking at here. That's the original LP was on Combat Records, correct? No?
It was on Torrid Records.
Torrid Records.
Torrid, yeah.
Okay, well, that explains that. Steve, what do you got?
Yeah.
Number 3.
Number 3, I'm on the latest album, Blood In, Blood Out. I had that down a little bit further earlier in the week, and I had it on while I was doing some chores yesterday, and I'm like, man, this is really something. I remember listening to it a lot when it came out a couple of years ago. Actually, we sponsored the show at the Chance. It was Testament, Exodus, and another band, Children of the Sun, maybe. We were hanging out with Steve and them on the tour bus all night. There was some interesting stories that Steve has to say. Very cool guy to meet in person, and hanging out with Chuck Billy and everybody that night. It was a lot of fun. But some of my highlights from that is like he mentioned before, Salt of Wound, the track Blood In, Blood Out, Collateral Damage. I think it's a very strong comeback out, not a comeback album, but a strong album for their latest album.
I agree.
Yeah, all those Exodus guys are great guys. I've had the pleasure of hanging out with them many times over the years, and great guys. And Gary Holt, it was just his birthday. I think
It was.
So
yeah, I saw that.
I always wish him a happy birthday on social media. But
Gary's doing all right, because I guess he was positive for the virus, correct?
Yeah, well, although everybody on that tour was Testament, Death Angel,
yeah,
all of them got a portion of it, but they're all fine. Everybody's doing well, so that's
yeah. Will's a friend of mine too. He's been to my store, and I was like so sad about Will being, and he was the one that got the worst out of it.
He was the worst. He was in the hospital for a while, but he's on the mend now, so everybody
excellent.
Is
Thank God.
The COVID-19 tour apparently,
Yeah.
but they're all better now, so that's good.
Excellent.
So my number 3 is Pleasures of the Flesh. I'm a big fan of the first 3 records, obviously. So it's hard to rank 2 and 3. Number 1 was pretty easy for me, but Pleasure of the Flesh, classic Exodus.
Yep.
All right. It's almost like Elliott and I had a discussion before we kind of did this show, because it seems like almost every pick is exactly the same. Bonded by Blood's my number 3. So I know Brian and Steve are probably wondering, what? My only real issue with this, I never liked the vocals of Paul Baloff. I know.
I know. Daisy said, see you. Daisy's leaving now. Bye, guys.
He's gone.
Daisy left the room, man.
I love the album. I love the songs. It's ferocious, and
you want to come back? All right.
I was never a fan of his vocals. Sorry. I know. I know that's like blasphemy. I know.
That is.
I know. I'm gonna get all sorts of hate mail after saying that, but hey, gotta be honest.
Some of their weakest material too, like Lesson in Violence, Exodus, Metal Command, Piranha. Yeah, I agree. Strike of the Beast.
No, the songs are great. Songs are great.
Hey, you're doing all right. At least we weren't all having a 3-way tie.
That is a
4-way tie.
That is a shocking moment.
And that's not a decision that I came about recently. I've been thinking that way since I first bought that album back when it first came out.
It's why we do the show. There's got to be a little controversy.
Yeah, exactly. So, hey, I always liked Zetro better. It's just me. Whatever. Elliott, back to you.
All right. For my number 2, I have Fabulous Disasters. Came out in 1989. Zetro singing. My favorite song on this album is Cajun Hell, but of course I love the classic Toxic Waltz. My dad said that when he was younger, he would always watch Headbangers Ball, and that song would always be on Headbangers Ball. That's
sure.
a little thing. And I also love the AC/DC cover called Overdose.
Yeah.
The reason why, like I said, the only reason why I put this above Bonded by Blood is because I like the production just slightly better.
Well, guess what my number 2 album is? You said you and him are linked. Me and him are a bit linked on this list too, but Fabulous Disaster, my number 2, of course. Their anthem, the Toxic Waltz. I love the track Fabulous Disaster, and they printed it in red, so I can't really read what I'm trying to read, but Open Season, Corruption, it's a strong record.
I will say I got a lot of bruises and mosh pits going nuts to that song at plenty X of the show in the past when I was younger.
I'm too old for a mosh pit now, but I sure miss them.
Well, now, yeah,
Right
but back in the
now.
day, yeah, come on, that's what I'm
I
talking
might
about.
just go in one if it ever opens up again right now. Just to say, like, wow, let's bump into somebody, man.
All right, Brian, you're up.
Yeah, and my number 2, I'm going to follow the pack here, Fabulous Disaster. But unlike Elliott and Steven, I don't have an album cover to hold up, so there's
Oh, okay.
pretend there's one there.
Pete's got that covered. He's got the, Pete's
I got them all out. I got them all here.
When I film from my store, I've got all the props. At home, I don't have as much. I was up in the store Wednesday morning.
I was going to say, you were in the store the other day. You should have grabbed all your props. You were right there.
Well, I grabbed 2. I grabbed a couple Exodus records. Last week, I got the King Diamond ones.
You did. That's true. Okay.
I get up there and I do stuff, and I don't go up there yet. And hopefully we're going to get to reopen soon, but I think every 15 days they push it back another 15.
Oh, real quick. So I do these Instagram live things several times a week, and Livia, who is King's wife, was on, and she mentioned. So we were talking about the King Diamond top 10 that we did, and she said that she was very impressed with all of our top 10s. The King was very happy, and based on Steven and Peter's number 1 song, I think he's going to add that to the set list.
Awesome.
Wow.
It's so cool that, like, they actually watched the program,
Look at the power of this thing.
The power of Slagel.
Oh, you guys.
Well, us too, yeah.
The power of Sea of Tranquility. Now we get to see Caron in the King Diamond set list.
I didn't even pick that song in my top 10, so you guys
did not. That's right.
Now it's going to end up in the set list eventually, it looks like.
Cool. Yeah, I tuned into that little show you had yesterday. That was a cool little thing with that. I didn't know who that was you had on. I did a little research on it. She seemed very cool.
Awesome.
All right.
All right, my number 2. Number 2. My number 2 is 2004's Tempo of the Damned. First with Andy Sneap. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this album. I did a show recently where I talked about some of the biggest kind of comebacks in rock and metal history. And for me, they were pretty inactive for a little bit, and they kind of came roaring back with Zetro on vocals and released this killer album with Andy Sneap behind the production chair. Made all the difference in the world, and I just think this is an absolutely terrific, ferocious album. And I love that album cover too. CD cover, whatever you want to call it.
It's
so that's my number 2.
It's very Phantom of the Opera, that cover. Like Dracula's castle kind of looking.
And I'm a big horror movie, old-time horror movie guy, so it's like, I'm all about it. All right, so here we are. Number 1.
For my number 1, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but my number 1 is Pleasures of the Flesh. Pleasures of Flesh, 1987, Zetro on vocals. My favorite song in general by Exodus is Till Death Do Us Part. Parasite is also another incredible song, like you guys mentioned. I love that song because of the solos. One of the solos sounds like a Halloween a little bit, and I love how they add extra spice with the whammy bar too. Reminds me of King Diamond, just a little bit, like a little hint of King Diamond. And I love the 30-second interlude. Reminds me of D a little bit, and then it goes into Speed of Hate, which is another incredible, fast, awesome song.
Good choice.
Cool. Here, number 1 for me. Such a surprise that you probably don't know which one I haven't picked yet. Bonded by Blood. Of course, there's not really any bad songs on here. Like when I was saying, like my I could just kind of say, well, what were the highlights? Whole album. I don't know. Piranha was one of my favorites, of course, when this came out. I can just remember having this album. I don't even think my store was open yet when this came out. What year does this come out? I forgot. No, I didn't write it.
85.
85. So if it was after November of 85, yes, I was open. But I remember that. I might have bought that at Rock and Roll Heaven.
I think that's where I got it, Steve.
Yeah,
I don't think you're quite open yet. Yeah.
Because Rock and Roll Heaven North used to be near us up here in Warwick, and I used to go down here and buy. And I mean, this is one of those albums that you just bought by the cover. It's like, that one looks pretty evil. We got to buy that. And that was back in the days before a lot of internet and whatever. So you bought albums by the cover, and you took it home and just kicked your ass out on it. Of course, there were other ones that you took home and was like, oh, the cover was cool.
Do you know how many albums Steve sold me back in the day? I would walk into his store and be like, "Oh, I got this." I'm like, "I never heard of it." He goes, "Look at that cover." I'm like, "All right, I'll take it." I mean, do you know how much money I spent that way? It's like,
Thank you.
people don't do that
Appreciate
anymore,
it.
right?
That's
All right,
new
Brian.
world.
Brian, I wonder what your number one's going to be.
Yeah, right. My number one is also bonded by blood. Bonded by blood. I should say it the right way. So interesting story about that. So I was very good friends with the Exodus guys. I'd seen them many, many times, especially up in San Francisco with Slayer, and so we talked a lot about signing them. And I was pretty close to signing them. And a very good friend of mine named Todd Gordon, who I knew from New York, who every time I would go to New York would put me up at his house. Well, his parents' house, actually. And very nice, became very close friends. He wanted to start a label as well. He had a finance guy who could actually give much more money than I could at the time. And he asked me, he said, "Hey, do you mind if I sign Exodus?" And I said, okay. I stepped out of the way, let him sign Exodus. And he ended up putting out Bonded by Blood on his Torrid Records. So that was one that we probably should have done, but I give it to him. But it's a great record. And unlike Peter, which I'm still shocked by his saying that he didn't like Paul Bailoff. Bailoff was number one of the most crazy personalities I've ever met in my 400 years doing and dealing with metal bands. Phenomenal guy, crazy, but amazing. And one of the best frontmen I've ever seen too. I mean, he was just unbelievable, both vocally and frontman. Not a classic perfect singer, but that was kind of why it worked so well. And but then again, you look at guys like Axl Rose, or all these people are supposed to be great singers. Robert Plant, they're all kind of on the periphery anyway. So Bonded by Blood, by far my favorite Exodus record, and Paul Bailoff, by far my favorite Exodus singer. No offense to, I love Steven and Rob, they're great singers as well. But number one, Bonded by Blood.
Awesome. I got to meet Paul too. He was, from what I remember, he was very cool.
He was
loved the store and everything else when he was there.
Over the top.
Yeah. Well, Daisy, going to leave the show now. Daisy, I'm going to take a hold of you. You're such a ham. You've been very good.
She loves being on camera. Look at that.
I see that.
All right, my number one, again, a lot of times we go back to points in time where albums really affected us. And I think for me, the late 80s was all about thrash, and Exodus were one of my favorite thrash bands of the time. And I was huge into this album. Fabulous Disaster from 1989. There's a handful of songs on here that just, for me, even to this day, The Last Act of Defiance, Cage in Hell, Toxic Waltz, which we talked about, title track, Corruption, Overdose. I mean, just dig it a lot. No disrespect to Paul Bailoff.
No.
You know what it is? The production of that first album is not, and I wonder sometimes, because he sounds pretty good on the live album. So I'm wondering if the production didn't do him any favors to my ears. I don't know.
100%. And I get, both you and Elliott said the same thing about the production. I totally get it because the production wasn't great. And I'm kind of the same way with Kill 'Em All by Metallica. That's one of my least favorite Metallica records because I don't like the production, and James wasn't really a proper singer quite yet. So I get all of that stuff. So you're okay. You're still all right.
All right. Well, thank you. So there we have it. Our ranking the Exodus catalog, least favorite to favorite, ranking the studio albums. I want to thank all of my guests here, Elliott, Brian, and Steve, for coming on the show. Elliott, since it's your first time here, why don't you talk a little bit about where folks can find you on this vast thing we call the internet, and where they can find your content and your stuff.
Well, you can catch me on my YouTube channel at littlepunkpeople. I do interviews. I've interviewed Zetro from Exodus. I've interviewed James Hetfield from Metallica, Gaten from Stranger Things as well. I've interviewed tons of awesome people, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at littlepunkpeople on Facebook and Instagram, and my personal Instagram at Elliott Fullam, ELLIOTTFULLAM.
His videos are the best. I love watching Elliott's stuff. I mean, one of my favorites is the one where you were hanging out with Bobby Blitz, and you were out driving around on one of Bobby's souped-up cars and muscle cars. And Elliott, I was lucky enough to have Elliott come and tour my store a couple of years ago. Actually, he was in this room. We did our blacklight posters and everything else. They've been such a cool family. I see him at all the local metal shows in New York City.
I love your store, by the way.
Yeah, he did great. He's awesome. And like I said, the Terrifier head. I have to get one of those. I'm very jealous that you have that. But
It's also
You're-
signed by David too.
But you're in the movie. I was supposed to be in the movie for 5 seconds, but the virus messed that up. So
Goddamn COVID virus is ruining everything.
probably a better movie without me anyway. So
Well, thanks again to everybody here. This was a lot of fun. So hopefully we're going to do this again next Saturday. We might just be making this a regular thing. So I
We're
guess
gonna
next
try
Saturday,
for Merciful Fate top
10 songs, Merciful Fate next week. Does that work for everybody? Yeah.
I'm in.
Rock on.
Cool.
Hey,
And
if
for
you need-
future shows, we are also going to be covering Celtic Frost. And is everybody in for Voivod, ranking the albums?
My dad's saying we should do Slayer instead.
We can do that as well. We can do all of them. We can do. They're all games. So
Slayer. We didn't do Slayer yet.
we did Slayer top 10 songs. We haven't done that.
Oh, well, we could do Slayer. I guess we got homework for the whole COVID lockdown here.
Yeah, exactly. So tune in, everybody. Tune in next week, same time, same channel. We'll have this same foursome delivering more metal discussion. So make sure you visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube. Say it, Steve.
Rockfantasy.com. Come buy some metal. We just opened up our online store. We're trying to stay in business out here. Thanks. And thanks, Pete, for hosting. And we've got Metal Blade Records, Amon Amarth, Brian Slagel. Go support Metal Blade. Buy some Metal Blade stuff from me. Buy it from him, man. Keep metal alive.
That's right.
Support your local record stores. They need it desperately right now.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
Daisy's even barking when I said Metal Blade Records. What do you think of that?
That's her favorite record label, right? See, there you go.
Yeah, she's going to listen to the new Black Dial Murder when we get done. I think I just got the vinyl.
There you go.
Very cool. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow on Sea of Tranquility on YouTube. We're here all the damn time. Take care, everybody. Sayonara. Bye-bye.
Rock on, man.